if you'd like to, you can bow your heads, otherwise. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you, Lord, for us being here today, for us the help and the vitality of the district. Lord, open our ears, open our hearts, and open our minds, so that we hear, listen, and understand what you want us to do. In your most precious and loving name. Amen.
That's as a reminder for the items on the agenda today for which you have an interest, be it an interest or a conflict of interest. If you could declare those at the beginning of the item, that would be good. We have an apology from Councillor Peters. Can I have somebody move that Councillor Hoss is moving, Councillor Reid is seconding. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against, carried. She is unwell, I can confirm that. I spoke to her last night. Yeah, she's not here, not even virtually. Councillor, just before we move to the public forum, we had a deluge of rain last night, and then thought that this height of the dam is of intense interest to us, and we've got an update from the Chief Executive, so
Thank you, Madam Chair. So it's been great rain. Felvalley Dam is now 71%.
Oh, right.
Yeah, which is really good. And Wilson's is at 68%.
Gee.
So I should touch wood and say hopefully we're through the worst of this.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind that you never beat nature. And nature will always win in the end. And also, this has been the driest 2-year period on our record, so we're not out of the woods yet. The drought committee will meet today. I expect they will relax restrictions, whether they'll take them off altogether, I don't know, that'll be their call. Yes, we'll take it from there. So we are getting through this. We're not out of the woods yet. We've had the 2 dry summers that we've had for a long, long time. The long range rain weather is not good. The long range prediction is for a dry in the spring, so we've still got a lot of work to do. But also all the work that we've done in terms of enlarging the pipe from the Hatia and the work we're doing on alternative water sources has been going on for years is starting to come through, and I think you can be justifiably proud of yourselves as predecessors because you only need to look north and south of us to see that others are struggling.
Thank you, Roy, for that update. It is pleasing to hear that the conservation efforts must still continue because we're facing a dry future.
Just a question, so what's the situation up north? How are they receiving all this, you know?
Looking at the rain radar, which I've become a big fan of late for the last few months, they did receive the rain that come from down there, but I don't know how they're doing. I know that it has been a lot better for them in the last few weeks. I'm not sure the exact position.
Can I recommend the Northern Regional Council website? They have daily rainfall in the catchments. It's really interesting. Like for us, it was between 50 mil and 101 millimetres at Whakapapa, 101 mil, so big rain. So it's sorry, right, so we better get on to our meeting. First up, we have our public forum, and today we have Nick Brother with us to present in the public forum, and he's the chair of the Sales Retirement Village. A very warm welcome to you, Nick. Please come forward if you would mind and present to us for up to 5 minutes. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Thank you very much. Okay, Your Worship the Mayor, thank you very much, and councillors of the Whangarei District Council. As you heard, my name is Nick Brothers. I'm the chair of the Sayosa Retirement Trust in Waipu. This picture's in front of you, thankfully, and thank you very much for doing that in colour. I'm here today because I believe that between us we have a fantastic opportunity to develop more social and subsidised rental housing in Waipu. But we can't do it on our own, and we really need to be able to partner with you guys to be able to do it. So firstly, if I could give you a brief overview of the village for those of you who are not overly familiar with it. Sayosa Retirement Village is run by a charitable trust that was established to provide low-cost rental accommodation for those residents of Waipu who need it. We currently have 21 rental units in the village, and the charter of the trust is that the rent should never be more than 25% of the pension. So it's subsidised. Applicants must be over 65, they're means tested, and we interview them before acceptance, and we continually have a waiting list of people wanting to get in. In the last few years, years, the Trust has undertaken a major upgrade of all the rental units, and we're absolutely proud of the quality product that they now are. But the income from the rental is never sufficient to cover the cost of repairs and maintenance. So we also have 29 licensed to occupy units. The owners buy and sell those at market rates, but each time, and they get to keep the capital gain, they get the whole capital gain, but each time a purchaser buys one, they pay $30,000 to the Trust. And we use that money to cover the overall maintenance of the village and the grounds. The land that the village stands upon is owned by the council. You guys own the land and you own all the essential services underneath. A little while ago, we took over responsibility for all the units. So we're totally responsible for the maintenance and upgrade of those units in perpetuity. So in effect, you guys own the land and everything underneath it, and we own the buildings. So it's a partnership already, it's a good partnership. The Trust is run by a board of local volunteers and 2 part-time staff, and over the years through astute financial management, previous boards, we've built up over $1 million in our bank. We've got a good solid bank account, and we own a parcel of land, this parcel of land here, which is to the south, on the south border. So it's on your maps, it's that parcel of land there. It's on the southern border of the village. It's 3,000 square metres, that bit of land. It's flat, bare, easy to develop, and it's got good walking and mobility scooter access to Waipu Town Centre, medical centres, swimming pools, parks, that sort of thing. So here we have, I believe, a great opportunity for us to develop some extra social housing in Waipu. But we can't do it without your substantial help. Currently, there's on the land, there's a sewer pipe at this end, at the play centre end, and there's water pipe, the water mains at the St Mary's Road end, and there's a stormwater pipe running down the southern boundary. What we would like to propose is that the council, for this development, that the council supply and install all the sewer, water and storm water infrastructure onto the land that you guys, that would match up with the land that you own. And in addition, we would ask that the council build a block of 3 rental units, exactly the same as the existing ones that the council built originally on the land that we have now. Our cost and commitment as a trust would be to build another 3 blocks of double licensed to occupy units, which we would sell to offset the future maintenance of the rentals and of the village. In addition, we would ask that the council waive any development fees on the land if the development went ahead. We believe that with the impact of COVID-19 only just now starting to be felt, there's going to be an increasing demand for social housing and in Northland. And I think the Seosa Trust has a proven track record of providing that. And we believe that with partnering with the council, it can just be a win-win for us, all of us, and for the community. The reality is that we can't afford to do this without the council's help. So at this stage, we haven't taken any further in terms of getting costings. This is really, I'm here today to see if the council has an appetite for this. If it does, then what do we have to then do as a team to go ahead and make it happen in the medium term? So that's really what I'm asking here today. But while I'm here, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you for all the help the council's given the trust over all the years. It's fantastic, and we don't take it for granted. We really appreciate it. And thank you for giving me your time today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Obviously today is not a decision-making forum for a presentation from the public forum, so we won't be able to give you any indication today, but we really appreciate you bringing it to us. And I'll open it to questions from councillors for any clarification. Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Your Worship, sorry. Just a query, is the village, they only for Waipu residents?
The way we do it is Waipu residents have priority, and if there are no Waipu residents on the list at the time, then we then go for relatives or family of people in Waipu, and then if there's no one in that, if you get further down the chain, then it would be judged on need after that. Yep.
Thank you. Gosh, look, lots of interest. Councillor Murphy. Thank you.
through the mayor. I was just wondering if the 6 that you propose would all fit on that single parcel, or you?
Yeah, it is deceptive in this aerial shot, but it's actually quite a large parcel of land when you're there. And Sandra Boardman and Alison Geddes have been and had a look at it. But we believe the block of 3 rental units would fit towards the back, and that we would just arrange them, because there's a nice open feel to the village right now that feels really nice and green, and so we would continue that. But we're confident that we could get 3 double blocks in there. But that's the sort of detail, I guess, that we would then lock down going forward. We just need, we know what income stream we need off the existing ratio of units to rental units to try and cover our costs, and we barely do it each year, and so we're just trying to protect that going forward.
Just following on from Councillor Golightly's comment, if I may, through you, Your Worship, about the waiting list. So you said, you've got the drop down in terms of how many have you got on your waiting list at the moment, and what's the catchment of the current waiting list, I guess?
Yeah, my understanding is there's 10 on the waiting list at the moment, and we're seeing a lot more demand of people moving from Auckland and trying to find accommodation. But there's a small percentage actually at the moment is local, and then there's more people who are moving from either out of Auckland or a larger Northland area. It's a very attractive deal, really, because like the rent's I think $120 a week at the moment, and everything else is provided. All they pay for is electricity and phone. Their own phone. Yeah.
And can I just check, when you say social housing, Nick, you are meaning pensioner housing for older people? Yes. Specifically. Yeah,
and I guess I term it social housing because it is subsidised. So we target people who are in straitened circumstances and need nice housing.
Good, thank you.
Nick, thank you for that. So, just a comment, have you spoken with any representatives of Playing Aurora, which is the old housing in New Zealand, at any time?
No.
Okay, so so a comment about that. So they've approached the council at various times looking for areas to do this sort of stuff. So it may be something we follow it up, but I can talk with you about that.
Yeah, clearly the big ticket that we can't afford is the infrastructure underneath, and so I don't. I thought you guys would be the guys to talk to about it. But if you say no, that's not our area of interest, then there's someone else. Then I should go and talk to them. Yeah. So.
Any other questions of that? That's Martin.
More of a request. Could I have a copy of your presentation, please?
Certainly.
Or anybody else want one?
Yeah, I'll leave it here if I may, and they could just be. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Copy of that's
most helpful.
We'll distribute it to all the elected members.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Look, and can I apologise that we missed the interview soon?
I've been called a lot worse.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys, thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Councillor 6 brings us to items 5.1, which are the minutes of our meeting held on Thursday, 28th of May. Can I have a word, including the confidential section? Councillor Martin's moving, Councillor Buckland seconded. Any corrections or amendments required for those minutes? I'll put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. Item 5.2, the minutes of our meeting held on Tuesday the 16th of June. Can I have somebody read for their return and correct report? Councillor Martin seconded. Any corrections or amendments required? I'll put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. Which brings us to item 6.1, standing orders for the Whangarei District Council. Councillors, I'm The recommendations on page 15, I would like to suggest that we move E up ahead of D. So E becomes D, D becomes E. And if D, what's now D, used to be E, is carried, we will additional wording to D. It's just to get the sequence correct, if we are choosing to have the chair and duties not physically present, then we need to add a little bit into D. And I will also foreshadow that I'll be taking each of these in parts. For us to change standing orders with the 75% support for change, and that's a total of 10 elected members. So I will be needing to know the numbers who are voting on each of these as we go through. So is anybody really brave enough to move the recommendations? Actually, I will move those recommendations with the changes to that. Do I have a second? Councillor Conklin, second. So let me just, if I can speak to this. As has been stated in the agenda item, we are required to review our standing orders for each triennium. And as you appreciate, COVID-19 got in the way of the timing. We would have preferred to have done this sooner, but in a way it's quite good that we can incorporate some of the thinking around what happened through COVID-19 and the way we conducted our meetings to enable us to inform our decision making on standing orders for this training. You'll see that we, if I just go down through them, I think the document from LG&Z was very helpful with the guide to standing orders. It gives a really good background into the reasoning why there have been some amendments and some recommendations for standing orders to be adjusted. Also, and we incorporated those as recommendations. In the past, we've always had the clause 19.3 to provide the chair's casting vote. Not anticipating that will change. And there was some very good guidance again in the document from LG&Z around the use of casting vote, but also it was noted in the report from Tracy that contrary to the views that people have, casting vote is not limited to supporting status quo or second status quo. But I also found it interesting that some councils used a limited range of the chair's ability to use the casting vote, which I found of interest, but that's not something that we've done in the past. There was also, if we're looking at C, the option A, which again has been traditionally what we have used as the process for allowing or not amendments, with more than one amendment, and we're looking at the status quo for that as well. The changes, I guess, that are significant if we choose to go with them, what was E is now D, removing the requirement for a chair to be a meeting. That is a significant change. And I think the standing orders were quite clear that it would only be used, where is it? What are we looking at? Page 83. Yes, it was 13.10, which means yes, 13.10. It was clear that it would really be in extraordinary set of circumstances that the chair would be absent from a meeting, and by far the majority of times it would be, but allowing that, giving the ability for us to be able to have a person in the chair to come in by audio-visual link. And again, where the technology is available. So there's lots of sort of things to be ticked off before that would apply. Then if we go through to retain clause 13.7, which is the right to attend by audio or audio-visual link, then you'll see that it's allowing chocolate fish, allowing members of the public or the chair and staff to be, or others approved by the chief executive, may may attend meetings by means of an electronic, unless they have been lawfully excluded. We may have reference exclusion for telephones going on.
Trying to chair the meeting by phone.
And then, so those are the main points. I just wondered, Tracy, if there's anything else that I might have missed that you wanted to draw the council's attention to?
Morning everyone, through your worship. No, that's a very good summary, thanks.
Thank you. So I'll open it up for discussion.
I have a question. D, it says retain standing orders that allow members to, by audio-visual link. My understanding was that we moved that we could go to audio-visual link until the 30th of June, then return to what we had. So therefore, it is not to retain, this is to change.
Could I just come in through the chair? Yes, what we actually agreed at the earlier meeting was to review it by the 30th of June, and that was one of the reasons for bringing it here today. So this is your opportunity to review whether you still want to retain that. The temporary notice that was put in place as a result of COVID actually expires today, funnily enough.
So therefore, we are under the old rules, because it makes a big difference when it comes to voting, whether it's retain or whether it's to remove. And that's the difference we're having here. We agreed till the 30th of June, which expires, and now we have reverted back to the old ones. So it's not retained, this is to change.
Yeah, Councillor, just for clarification, it is actually in our current standing orders that members can attend meetings by audio-visual link. So there is no change. It is correct to say that it's retaining that option, that they are in our current standing orders. That's correct. Thank you for asking that question. It clarifies that it is a current provision within the current standing orders to do so. Until the 30th of June. No, it is in our standing orders now.
Why did we need to move that?
Well, I ask on behalf of Councillor Martin what he just muttered under his breath. Why did we need to move that particular provision then if it was already in our standing orders?
Tracy.
Through the chair, because you agreed to review it before 30th of June. There was a discussion at the time. We said we want the ability to review the decision we've just made before the 30th, which is why we brought it back.
We could choose to remove it because it is a current standing order, it's not a change. So we could amend it that that is not required to be voted on. I'm very happy with that because that is the status quo. But as Tracy said, when we went into the extraordinary circumstances of COVID, we all agreed that we would want to ratify that at the decision on adopting our new standing orders. Are we confused?
Yes.
No.
Your Worship, where I think Councillor Martin's coming from is probably 2 years ago we put a motion on the books that we would not have any video filming of the meeting until we moved into a new building. And that is passed and carried by council. And now we had a temporary amendment to the COVID situation, which is understandable. So I think that's where the confusion is coming in.
Yes, I think confusion between attending by audio or audio-visual link is potentially being confused with live streaming. It's not about live streaming, this is about attending a meeting via audio or audio-visual link. So that's what the standing order is about. So keep the live streaming aspect of it separate in your mind. It's about whether or not a member can attend a meeting via audio or audio-visual link. For example, today, Councillor Pearson were well enough, she could have attended via audio-visual link. Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you. Now I'll ask my question that I actually had through you, Your Worship, to Tracy really. On page 82, Tracy, under 13.8 about quorum, members who attend meetings by electronic link will not be counted as present for the purposes of the quorum. Can you just explain to us what the implications might be?
And I just want to say through the chair that is quite an unusual thing to say that you can actually attend the meeting and participate and vote but not be part of the quorum.
It's quite unusual.
Unusual,
That's
on first blush. But what it actually means in practice is that if there weren't sufficient members in the chambers to have a quorum and everyone was attending by audio-visual link, then a quorum couldn't be maintained if there weren't enough people physically present.
And of course that was waived through the COVID-19, through the special legislation.
Yes, it expires today. So the notice, the pandemic notice expires today.
I actually do think it was extended through to September. From memory, there was go from the all government chief
I'll pick that up.
So just to further that, so if we had a majority of councillors choosing to come in on, stay home and do this electronically, then we potentially could not hold a council meeting.
That is correct. I think through the chair, the important thing to note is that to attend by audio-visual link requires a process of liaising with the chair. It's not just a matter of ringing up in the morning and saying, I won't be there today, I'm coming in by audio-visual. There's actually a clear process set out for having an organised way of arranging this, so that shouldn't be an issue.
And I think it's really important point to make that it will be by exception. There's an expectation that we will attend a meeting in person, but there could be extenuating, extraordinary circumstances where somebody might be in hospital with a leg and still wishes to participate in one of them. So, yeah, I think it's important to note that this is by exception and by agreement with the chair. So, if the numbers are mounting up and then we say, I'm going to be home today, then it would be you'd have to be a pretty compelling reason to attend.
Just excuse me, through the chair, just to clarify that clause 13.2, a member will give the chairperson and chief executive at least 2 working days notice. Clause 13.12 on page 83 says that a member will give the chairperson and the chief executive at least 2 working days notice. And the clause goes on to make other requirements. So again, it's an organised.
So it is a by exception. Thank you.
Through the chair, item 14.1 of the thing, there's a whole section there which has been removed, which seems a bit unusual to remove, and I'm trying to understand the logic behind it, because the 14 is stated the chairperson's role in meetings, and then it's got only referring to the mayor. Now, and it could actually be the mayor or chairperson, but all of that's been removed out. So what's the reasoning and rationale behind that?
Yeah, thank you, John. At 40.1 refers to the, paraphrase it, the mayor must preside at meetings of the council. 14.2 provides that in the case of committees, subcommittees and subordinate decision-making bodies, the appointed chairperson must preside. So there's a difference between the mayor presiding at council and chairperson.
So 14.1 refers to this council meeting, and the other 14.2 refers to this council meeting. We don't have a local community board, and we're not a regional council with a chair. So those were in the template, so we adjusted the template to our situation. Questions?
And the other question I had actually is in relation to Appendix 5, I believe. Appendix 7, sorry. It used to be Appendix 5 and it got moved to Appendix 7. Yes.
118.
Yeah. 123 out I know none of these have been changed. I realise that these are in the previous standing orders. but I'm just concerned about the wording in there. It actually comes across quite clearly that the only person who should really be in shot is the chairperson, when to make it fair and equitable amongst all councillors should be able to be viewed. And it also down in number 5, it actually says, shots are unrelated to the proceedings or not in the public interest. Who determines on what is not in the public's interest? The camera person? The mayor? The chairperson?
Tracy does.
Chair. I'm happy to respond to that. In response to your first question, Councillor Coccarello, number 1 says that default shows an or a wide-angle shot of the meeting room, which is how it's occurring today. In relation to number 5, I guess that's a protection in the event that something happens in chambers that you might not want broadcast to the public, and that would be at the discretion of the chair. I can't anticipate what kind of thing might happen, but there might be some sort of disruption or something that happens that we don't want recorded, and so the chair has the discretion to say we want to stop live streaming. I just want to add to this that we are about to start a piece of work to look at the future of live streaming and how we're going to do that in the future. It was put together, stood up quite quickly during COVID as a response, but we do need to review and reflect on how we're doing it, whether it's effective, and how we're going to do it in the future. So we will no doubt be looking at this Appendix 7 to make sure that it's fit for purpose, and we can always bring back an amendment in the future if something needs to change or be clarified.
The reason I ask about Appendix 7, Madam Chair, is that there was quite a few comments on the broadcasting that we've done where people say we can't see the councillor who's speaking. We can hear them, but we can't see them. And that's, again, the way it's worded at the present moment, it's focusing on the one person when it should really be up to the person who's actually speaking. So, for example, as Councillor Deeming speaking, the people can actually see it's Councillor Deeming which is speaking.
Yeah, I disagree that it says one person. I think what we're doing is the wide-angle shot of the meeting room. I agree with you that the angle of the camera can eliminate people being able to see. I looked at it and I couldn't see you or Councillor Pine. So I actually spoke with Craig this morning about potentially switching it meeting by meeting so that you get that room and not Councillor Cooper as we were talking. So it is being considered. And to be fair, we're trying our best with what we have, and we will improve that as time goes on.
Okay, so it was, my point was more in relation to being able to access. So see who the staff are at the end, that a lot of the public can't actually see them either. So it's when they're talking, they're explaining something, it's not actually being able to view as well.
Councillor Golightly.
Oh yes, thank you, Your Worship. I was just going to ask Tracy, and I think I sort of realised it myself. On 13.8 it says members who attend meetings by electronic link, and because we're talking about the chair, so that the chair will also not be counted as part of a quorum.
Yes, members would refer to members of that forum or committee or council, so that's all
including the chair.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Connor.
Just kind of a little follow-on from this one. But if it was somebody sitting in the stands, in the public area, would they not be able to see who's being talked to from staff anyway? If they were sitting in the public gallery, if they were looking at us from the public gallery, they wouldn't be able to see the staff member's face who's talking anyway. So is that temporarily, whilst we don't have any provision to be able to put a full setup in, basic setup?
I guess, can I understand what you're saying is so where the cameras at the moment is similar to what a person in a public forum would experience anyway. Okay. Yeah, that's not.
All three have basics. Also just following up. Sorry? Yeah. That's another one for fish. Councillor Coccarello also brings up a good point of hearing impairedness. Fortunately, most of the councillors are fairly good at being able to hear, but Councillor Peters is often not able to hear what is happening around the tables. let alone the actual people in the public gallery are hard to hear as well. Some not hard to hear, but they can't hear us very well either sometimes. We had a situation yesterday with one of our committees where the chairperson and the staff member also were softly speaking, and even just around the table we had issues. Now we do have microphone jacks on the table, and why don't we use those? Because it would be a benefit to everybody, especially understands. But at the same time, if we had a council member that was deaf or blind, which is a possibility, or we had a public member in the gallery who was deaf and blind, what allowances do we have for that? Like, if we had a council member who was deaf, they would have to have a sign for that. If you had an interpreter, would they have to go through confidential as well? They can't be able to interact. It brings up so many questions, but because we have the technology, I don't see why we can't use this stuff, and that kind of goes with the live streaming as well. To me, it's logical. To me, it makes sense. The benefits outweigh the negatives, and the ability to have audio, especially, gives somebody else outside, especially with live streaming, the ability to translate to somebody who can't actually hear what's being said. Or there is also technology that you can have up on screen, as we've been watching with COVID, that translates as they're speaking, and it comes up and you can see the words. So it brings more of the deaf community in. And I went to the Matariki Festival at Whangarei the other day, and we had a little portion of the deaf community there, and it was wonderful. It was great to be able to incorporate that. And what provisions do we have for those?
Currently, not a lot, but I agree with you that there are some amazing technologies that we will implement, and I would anticipate that when we upgrade, that all of those points will need to be addressed, and we want to address them. There's definitely a desire to make it very inclusive, and I agree with you that we must take that into account with the future design for the future channel. We'll do our best. At the moment, I think the sound quality from this setup is actually quite good for the live stream that I've looked back on. It seems to work well. Thank you, Councillor Connor. Councillor Murphy and Councillor Martin.
Yeah, I just question, so I really support members being able to attend by audio-visual link, but for me I think it's really important that the chairperson is there physically, because chairing a meeting is not so much just about the procedural stuff, but it's actually about all the physical cues. And so I just wonder, when you look at the challenges that like Councillor Connor has brought up as far as, you know, if that person is training digitally, they may be able to see members raise their hands, they may not be able to hear well what members are saying. On page 83, oh no, sorry, on 85, there's some interesting points. For example, 14.5, when the chairperson stands during a debate, members are required to sit down. Well, if the chairperson is standing on a screen, you may not see them standing. You know, so I just query, for me, I think the chairperson could still attend the meeting by audio-visual link, but I think for me it's important to actually have someone step forward to be there and be physically present. So I'd like to hear what other people have to say about that. Thank you.
Councillor Martin.
It's article I would like to move an amendment. On D, I would like to remove the word retain.
Councillor Martin, can I just check which D you're referring to? Because remember, we moved E to the position of D. So are you talking about the D that's written in the
original agenda?
Thank you.
Yeah. Just take out the word retain. Agree to clause 3.7 standing orders to allow members to attend meetings. So we remove that. We remove the ability. And E, we agree to remove the requirement clause to agree the requirement in clause 13 of chairing duties to be undertaken by a member physically present. Just take out the word remove and leave the rest, and then amend as required. Staff to amend as required. I believe that a chairman, just speaking on it, I believe...
Councillor Martin will need a second.
Oh, yeah.
Councillor Reid is seconding.
Good. I believe that a chairman should be there, and there should be, in our democracy, we need to have communication between everyone. I doubt if there's anybody around here that ever comes to a meeting and isn't supported or influenced or has better knowledge of the subject after we've had a meeting where everyone is together. That clearly wasn't happening as well when we were doing all the audio-visual stuff. And having people coming in on the audio-visual when most of us were here was quite disruptive. And sometimes they didn't get asked the questions when they wanted to speak. So that's an issue for me. So the chair needs to be there, needs to read the meeting, and needs to make sure that everybody has a fair shot at it. So that's pretty much what it is. If we're going to have democracy, we need to be here, we need to be discussing it. We're elected to come here and represent our people. That's what we should be doing. In the past, if the chair hasn't been able to make it, an alternative's gone into the role, usually the chair if it's just the chairman. If the mayor's unavailable, the deputy mayor steps up, and that's a process that I would like to continue. So,
Councillors, can I just clarify for you 13.10? If you read on top of page 83, where technology is available and a member is attending by meeting by audio, the chairperson must. Then if you look down below the points A, D, if the chairperson is attending by audio or audio-visual link, duties will be undertaken by the deputy chair or a member who is physically present. So if the chair of a meeting, let's say for example, it's a community development meeting, Councillor Benny is attending, he cannot chair from the audio-visual down under the standing orders as they are. He can attend the meeting, but the meeting of the committee would choose the person, the member to chair the meeting that day who is physically present.
yeah.
So I think that's covering off the concerns that Councillor Murphy had and perhaps Councillor Martin. But I just need to check.
No, not really.
Okay.
I think that everyone should have the front up.
Just removing the word retain, I think that Councillor Martin's not actually hitting the purpose that
I think Karen's got a suggestion.
So, Councillor Martin, just to clarify, you would be removing clause 13.7 in the draft standing orders to allow members to attend meetings by audio-visual link as set out in sections 13.7 to 13.16 of the draft standing orders. So you're removing that from the standing
Yeah.
orders. Agree to retain the requirement in clause 13.10 for the chairing duties to be undertaken by a member that is physically present, to allow a chairperson flexibility to attend by audio or audio-visual link.
But just stop it at the present.
Thank you.
Yeah. Undertaken the member that is physically present.
I had a question.
Councillor Cutforth?
At the risk of using standing orders to explain standing orders, can you move an amendment that is in direct contradiction to what the motion was? Because that's effectively what Councillor Martin was doing.
No, done.
You're incorrect, Councillor Cutforth. Councillor Martin should probably wait until we vote on those particular clauses, and then if they are lost, then bring forward the motion.
That's what I would have thought, but I'm not an expert on standing orders, obviously, but you know.
So I have to give notice that I will move it if it's lost.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Now, where does that leave us though? We have an amendment on, are you withdrawing the amendment with the support of the
Have to at this stage.
Thank you. Just to be clear, I think that is the correct process. Councillor Reid?
Just one question, Your Worship, through the Chair. Now, you stated that
if Councillor Benny was to attend by audio-visual link, and he was the chairperson of that committee, that means his vote would be invalid?
No, I'm saying that if the chair of a committee, as opposed to the chair of council meeting, so if the chair of a committee is not physically present in the meeting but comes through audio-visual link, they are not the chair for that meeting. But their vote will count, but they won't form part of the quorum. And the committee will choose the person to chair the meeting that day.
There is provision in here that if you're not attending physically, but by video link, pretty much you're a bystander, your vote will not be included.
Oh, your vote definitely counts,
Yes.
but the number
That's
of
contradicting what's in here.
Can you show me which rules you have?
We've just spoken about it. Carolyn might pick up quicker than I can.
So just while Councillor Reid is, I'll come back to you if that's okay, Councillor Reid, if you find a particular standing order. Councillor Pine.
To see how this goes. Can I make an amendment to remove D as a change, so that we keep as well the ability to retain?
Understanding the rules of whatever it is, not whether the amendment isn't be spoken to the motion. So only those who have not spoken to motions and move an amendment, because we're under our current standing orders, which is 14 days, which limits.
Well, I asked 2 questions.
No, I think you'll find if you think back, you spoke quite clearly about the issue around accessibility.
Wasn't a question.
And that I would class that as speaking to the motion, you're speaking
I thought I said, what do we provide for those? So that's you have to
rule is
very grey. It's a moot point, and I would say that yes, there was a question, but then you spoke quite clearly about the need for us to consider that in future, and I would consider that as speaking to the standing order. Councillor Reid, did you find what you were looking for?
It's a little bit of a contradiction, Your Worship. 13.8 and 13.9. And it was just my understanding of it. I'm only a lay person. Members who attend by meetings by electronic link will not be counted as present for the purposes of a quorum. Now, my thinking of that is if you're not part of the quorum, your vote won't count. Am I right or wrong?
And then 13.9 does make it clear.
And it contradicts.
Yeah, I think I can understand why you're thinking if you're not present you can't vote. But in actual fact, the presence or absence is part of the quorum. A separate issue from the ability to have your vote counted, recorded, etc. Difference to that, both of those, they don't negate one another. I'm confident that they are quite clear about the differences between forming part of the quorum and your ability to vote, even though you're out of the room.
That's why I'm a lay person, not a rocket scientist.
Ms. Tracy,
Any further debate?
just wondering, Your Worship, where we were left with the standing order issue. The issue I raised regarding Councillor Martin, where were we left with that?
Yes, so the amendment has been withdrawn, but Councillor Martin has foreshadowed that should that item be lost, he will move an amendment. Amended motion. A further motion?
Yes.
With the things being taken in different points, can we speak to different points, or are they?
The taking in parts is the voting taking in parts. Decision making. Thank you, Tested today. Councillor Cooper.
I think it's very important that in extenuating circumstances, people have the right to be part of the meeting by streaming it. I think it would be wrong of us to deny that to people who are in those situations. So I support the standing order as it's written in the recommendation. And I think I also I do support the ability for the chairman to attend but not chaired by a live stream, given that the physical meeting will be chaired by someone physically present. So that's where I stand on those. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Pulse.
Your Worship, on the back part of the agenda item, 118, 190, we've got all these appendices listed. In the actual motion, it does not include the appendix. It's adopt the standing orders as set out, but it has no reference to including the appendix. And I thought that it should have been tied into the motion.
The appendices do form part of standing orders, and the
But it doesn't say that in the motion.
No, I don't think it needs to, because the appendices are part of the standing orders. But if you want belts and braces approach, we could add, I'm happy with the support of my second, whoever it was. To add with including appendices, belts and braces.
Thank you. Because one of my biggest concerns is it seems strange as councils go on, we add more information to the standing orders. And I thought we would have been removing some of them over time. And it always worries me about the previous debate, and that's why I've come in late in this debate, is because I've been looking at what are they hiding in the appendix. They've got us focusing nice on a couple of words and putting all of the rest in. So I think as long as the council is aware of, to hear of, being aware of hidden detail. But that's what we're going to be guided by this all the way through our council meetings. Anyway, that's why I wanted it all included and clear.
Any further discussion?
Just one, Your Worship, through the Chair, 20.11, electronic devices at meetings. States there, personal use may only occur at the discretion of the Chair. Every meeting we hear phones buzzing and beeping and ringing, and it is distracting, to say the least. It would be nice if members around the table and in the chamber were to take more notice of it.
And it does note that a chairperson may require every electronic device switched off if its use is likely to distract a meeting. And yeah, there have been a couple of times when the buzz of a message or a phone can be distracting. And I think every chair needs to remember that they have the ability to ask a member to switch it home. I think that our devices are a different thing, and uses his phone as his device for the meeting agenda, so it would be totally inappropriate to ask him to turn his phone off, and I've never heard it buzz. So it's a good point that you raised, thank you. Good discipline to have. In justification. Any further? Oh, Councillor Whangarei.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question again in relation to 13.12. This is on, in my version, 85. Some of you guys, it's 83. A request to attend by audio or audio-visual link. It makes assumptions in there that, or should I say, makes requests in there that the technology should be available, but the council is not going to provide the equipment. How does that come when it comes to voting? When we had, during the COVID situation, we had connections dropping in and out, and people were not having the good connections. It doesn't seem to allow for that, but it's saying that they must provide. If the person's in an area where they haven't got a good connection, how do they move to another area which has got connection?
Can you clarify for me what you mean by must provide? Where does it say must
provide?
Well,
when such a request is made, technology is available, the Chief Executive must take reasonable steps to enable you to attend by audio or visual link. However, the Council has no obligation to make the technology facilities for the audio visual link available. So it's basically saying it must be available, or they must have it. But if they're in an area which is not good, and they can't move from that location, so how do they attend? and actually able to proceed with the meeting correctly.
I think that covers all of the points that you're raising, that where a request is made and the technology is available, the Chief Executive must take reasonable steps to enable a member. But you're right, it could be that there's a significant outage of internet provision, and that's an unfortunate set of circumstances where it is, as Councillor Denny just said, bad luck. If you're not physically in the room. So, you know, it comes with difficulties. It's not necessarily, which is why it's used as a default, by exception.
Through Madam Chair, is it possible that we can ask the CEO to investigate better or more emphasis on telecommunication companies to provide a service in some areas?
I know there's a huge area going on with digital enablement, and I think that's something that we've supported. I don't know if there's anything in particular around that.
Through you, Madam Chair, as part of the Tautoko Northern Economic Action Plan, the digital enablement and connectivity was a complete part of that. The CE Forum, led by Malcolm Nicholson, who's in charge of this, has been working on it for a while. There's been a whole lot of things put in, but the fact of the matter is someone has to pay for that infrastructure, and if it's not economic, then it requires essentially government subsidy of some description. So we have made significant progress over the last 5 years that I've been here, but we're still a long way from that, and it'll be up to actually Crown infrastructure partners, people who like to do that sort of work. But we've been lobbying and doing a lot of work around it.
I also noticed going through the Northern and Tutukapi the other day, they're getting fibre, so each of the communities are being better enabled, but it still doesn't. And the other point I would like to make, and Karen's pointed out, 13.15, link failure, we're in audio visual failures, and there are other technical issues that prevent a member who is attending, I think, from participating in a meeting. That member must be deemed to be no longer attending the meeting. So with our standing orders, it's all eyes wide open. If your technology fails, you don't, you're no longer attending. So it's your own personal risk, I guess. Councillor Connor, question?
If you happen to be in the chamber and you had, let's say you had diarrhea and you had to run out of the bathroom, would you hold the vote? Would you hold the vote so that person could come back? Or would the vote be carried on if you're out of the room? So if the dropping out of the audio thing is...
Thank you, good question. Any further discussion? So let's go through, and as I indicated, we'll take each of these recommendations in parts.
For a division, please.
Councillor Martin has called for a division. I'll put the first motion that Council A note the Whangarei District Council draft standing orders, including appendices, in attachment 1. Those in favour, please. I could use standing orders and make you all stand if you want to. Please raise your hand.
Councillors Cockerillo, Connor, Hulse, Reid, Innes, Martin, Murphy, Golightly, Cutforth, Kenny, Cooper, Deeming, and who worship the Mayor.
Carried unanimously. And B, agree to retain clause 19.3 in the draft standing orders for providing for a chair's casting vote. Those in favour, please raise your hands.
Councillors Cockerillo, Connor, Hulse, Reid, Innes, Martin, Murphy, Golightly, Cutforth, Kenny, Cooper, Deeming, and who worship the Mayor.
And C, agree to retain option A, clause 22.2 of the drafting orders as the default option for dealing with motions and amendments, with the option to agree at the start of the meeting to use either option B or C as set out in clauses 22.3 and 22.4 of the draft standing orders. Those in favour, please raise your hands.
Councillors Connor, Hulse, Reid, Innes, Martin, Murphy, Golightly, Cutforth, Kenny, Cooper, Deeming, and who worship the Mayor.
Those against?
Cockerillo.
Carried. Now D, which in our papers reads E, but it's going to be D. Agree to remove the requirement in clause 13.10 10 for the chairing duties to be undertaken by a member that is physically present, to allow a chairperson flexibility to attend, we could probably add, but not chair, attend by audio or audio-visual link. Those in favour, please raise your hands.
Councillors Connor, Innes, Murphy, Golightly, Cutforth, Ennie, Cooper and Her Worship the Mayor.
Those against?
Councillors Cockerillo, Pulse, Reid, Martin and Deeming.
That's not two, is it? So that is lost. And E, which was D, actually,
That's going to
lost.
lost.
Is that a moot point?
That's
Oh, no, it's not. No, okay. So D, E, which was D, agreed to retain clause 13.7 in the draft standing orders to allow members to attend meetings by audio-visual link, as set out in sections 13.7 to 13.16 of the draft standing orders. Those in favour, please raise your hands.
Councillors Connor, Innes, Murphy, Golightly, Cutforth, Ennie, Cooper and Her Worship the Mayor.
And those against?
Councillors Cockerillo, Pulse, Reid, Martin and Deeming.
Cool. That's a big change.
8.
Is lost.
Lost.
And if adopt the standing orders, no, I think we'll do incorporating recommendations B, C as resolved. So D and E will be lost. So adopt the standing. Now, I don't think we can adopt until we address the amendment. Can I ask a question? If the amendment that Councillor Martin and Reid moved is lost, do we retain the status quo for those provisions in the current standing orders? This is a good one. Dominic, you must like the answer.
There's a point of order. It'll be a new motion, but not a new, not an amendment.
Not
It's a new
amendment.
motion. So it allows. Councillor Martin was advised that he'd have to withdraw his amendment and let it be a motion. Here, Councillor Martin had to advise that he had to move a new motion. So
Oh yeah, I'm saying that I'm going one step ahead and thinking if that is lost, where does that leave us?
What exists.
So there's somebody moves a motion to lay it on the table, so we've got time to think about it.
I'll leave them to monitor that in the next one.
I'd be happy to lay it on the table until the next meeting, so we can go through it
We're
if you
getting
want.
pretty close.
Okay.
And procedural motions can't be allowed in pretty much equally spoken.
Come on.
Very much.
Looking for a way forward.
Wait a second. Councillor Dean?
Adopt the standing orders as included in attachment 1, incorporating the recommendations. Wouldn't it be incorporating unless they've been voted on?
No, they've been lost, so they're not incorporated. That's, so we're in limbo land without, until the recommendations from Councillor Martin, the amendment has been put and we know where that sits. Councillor Martin, you foreshadowed that you would be moving an amendment.
Yes. Would you like to read it out?
E, remove clause 13.7 in the draft standing orders to allow members to attend meetings by audio-visual link as set out in sections 13.7 to 13.16 of the draft standing orders. And D, agree to retain the requirement in clause 13.10 for the chairing duties to be undertaken by a member that is physically present.
I will take those in parts. Are we clear what we're voting on? Councillor Murphy?
Well, I initially thought that my concern had been answered, but now, if we look again at that recommendation, 13.10, so the Mayor explained to me that I didn't need to be concerned because it states there that the chairing duties would be undertaken by someone who's physically present. But actually we're voting to remove that.
With the intent of Councillor Martin's amendment.
But could you just clarify that for me?
Motion is to ensure that whoever's chair, if the chair of the committee is present, they will be the chair. That they can't attend the meeting by audio-visual link and be the chair.
So that wasn't very good.
They have to abdicate the chairing duties.
No, but actually when you read that recommendation, it actually says we're removing the requirement in 13.10. So are we deleting, so that last sentence there that says if the chairperson is attending by audio or visual link, then chairing duties will be undertaken by someone who is physically present. Are we deleting that?
In the current standing orders, the 13.10 would relate to the chairperson not being able to. I wish I had my standing orders with me. Clarify what the current is.
Okay, so you're assuring me that, as you explained earlier, that even if the chair is attending by audio-visual link, someone must be nominated to chair the meeting.
If that had been passed, that would have been the case. What Councillor Martin's doing is removing that ability.
That's right. So the way it does is that it doesn't. Not
What does the chair review the chair meeting?
So what you're doing is retaining the
Person chairing.
Councillors, if you wouldn't mind, I'm just going to do some research. Thank you, and I need a bit of silence.
Watching this on 22, not. It's just in the last minute.
This is a good point. That Councillor Murphy, you were right in saying that if we had passed what reads as E, then we would have been removing that requirement and allowing the chair to chair from audio-visual. You were right. And I misread that,
Understood.
misinterpreted. So in actual fact, what Councillor Martin is doing is in fact doing what I thought we were doing all along. Oops. So it's good. And in that part, which is E in our agreed to route.
Yes.
So Councillor Martin is saying retain the requirement for the chair to be physically present.
Yes. Yeah.
And the other one though is about attending by audio-visual, so the two are quite separate. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, except that I think that there's a differentiation between, for example, if Councillor Benny, who is the chair of that committee, if he cannot be present, then he can attend by audio-visual link as with any other member.
Yeah. But
He doesn't have to chair that meeting. So that
That's
is,
right.
for me, that's the important point.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
That's right. Yes. That's the chair of that.
I was just saying the standing orders that I have here, which is 2016-2019, doesn't have 13.10
Correct.
No, it doesn't.
That's what I keep saying.
It doesn't have it.
All right, so we've got two motions on the books, and the first one I'll get Carolyn to read.
E, remove clause 13.7 in the draft standing orders to allow members to attend meetings by audio-visual link as set out in section 13.7 to 13.16 of the draft standing orders.
So those in favour, please raise your hand.
It's very badly worded.
We are removing the ability for councillors to attend by audio-visual link, is what's intended by that motion.
Call for division.
The division has called, and thank you, Councillor Cooper. Those in favour, please raise your hand.
Councillors Cockerillo, Coles, Reid, Martin and Dealing.
Those against?
Councillors Connor, Innes, Murphy, Golightly, Cutworth, Benny, Cooper and Good Worship the Mayor.
It is lost. And the next one, which actually is the
Chief.
Read that one out again.
please.
Agree to retain the requirement in clause 13.10, which is if the chairperson is attending by audio or audio-visual link, then chairing duties will be undertaken by the deputy chair or a member who is physically present. We agree to retain that particular clause.
Those in favour, please raise your hands.
Councillors Cockerillo, Connor, Reid, Innes, Martin, Murphy, Golightly, Cutforth, Benny, Cooper, Deming and Her Worship the Mayor.
Carried unanimously. So now I need to know where we're at with the audio-visual elimination. We lost it to retain and we lost it to remove.
Through Chair, if you had didn't have 75% of the first vote, you were at status quo. So what's in the standing rules remains in the second.
Thank you, Dominic, that's clear. So now I will move the last one, which is to adopt the standing orders as included in attachment 1, incorporating recommendations B, C, D, and E as resolved, because those D and E were amended, but they are now, one of them solved and one of them is status quo. I'll put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Phew. Okay, that was too late.
Your Worship, a request. Could we have our standing orders updated?
As of today, they will be. There will be new standing orders. You can throw that to me. Item 6.2, elected member remuneration 2019 to 2022.
Worship, I was called for the table.
Councillor Hulse is declaring an interest in this item and removing himself from the table. So, councillors, we've got recommendations. I think before I ask for a member and second, I'll ask Tracy to just give us a bit of background to this item.
Through your Worship. So background to this is that on 28th of May, Council agreed to the terms of reference for the Te Karere Strategic Partnership Forum, and as a result of that, we are now bringing back recommendations around positions of responsibility in accordance with the Remuneration Authority's process. And so the report gives the background to that and sets out the rationale for the recommendation that we've made around the position of responsibility on the basis under discussion under point number 4. We've set out the reasons why we've made the recommendation we have there. In terms of, depending on the outcome of today, this is then submitted to the Remuneration Authority, who will issue a new determination, which will be backdated the day after the decision was made to establish the Te Karere Forum on 28th of May.
Thank you, Tracy. Any questions of Tracy?
Madam Chair, recently this week we actually had a person chairing the meeting when it wasn't actually approved by council. Yes.
The Takaria meeting was set out as a committee on the 28th of May with Councillor Holt as the chair.
However, in our minutes today, we're actually agreeing to the position created.
No, we were agreeing to the change to the remuneration for councillors as a result of that change in status for the so we added a chair, so we're looking at the remuneration for that one, which will be backdated to the 28th of May when the committee was formed. Is that clear?
Your Worship, just a point of clarification. The role there is co-chair of Takaria. It's a situation where we have two chairs for that meeting, and council would chair part of that meeting. It's a partnership, and I'm having it as co-chair, I feel reflects really the intent of that forum.
We haven't yet got a motion on the floor,
Oh,
so
yeah.
questions for Tracy before another question, Councillor Whangarei?
Madam Chair, just in relation to what Councillor Innes has just stated, were we not told that only chairs could be classified as from council representation, could not actually be classified as someone from outside?
So you'll see on the page 125, the external partnerships, the chairperson for Takaria is the council-based meetings is Councillor Holt, and for Mariah has Tui, the mandated Tui Hapu representative. So that reflects the fact that the council meeting is just making the role, however, for the elected member, Councillor Holt, still has that status of being the chair in both places.
And how does that work with if Councillor Innes has highlighted it to be co-chair, will that not mean that the money will be split between both chairs?
I would actually argue that this is not a co-chair. It was in the previous iteration, but the new terms of reference show that there is a chairperson, and that is Councillor Holt.
Okay.
So we did
Thank you.
deliberately do that when we set up the terms of reference for this. It used to be co-chairs, but we gave Taiko the mana of sitting with the chair and acting in almost a co-chair role, but definitely the chair was Councillor Holt.
And just for clarification on that, Madam Chair, the chairperson doesn't chair the meetings at the Mariah, is that correct?
The status of controlling the meeting on the Mariah is up to the Hapu representative, but technically Councillor Holt is still the chair. Tracy.
Just wandering through the chair, if I could just make a couple of comments of clarification. The first one is just that this is about allocation of the remuneration pool, which is only for elected members. And so any decisions about remuneration of other participants would be outside this discussion. I guess the second thing is just to clarify that the terms of reference talks about the chairperson depending on the location, but a position of responsibility is about more than sitting in the functional chair. It's about the leadership, responsibility and time commitment required to provide leadership also as the functional chair. And so it's much broader than just who actually sits in the physical seat on the day, which is why we've made the recommendation we have here. And that this is, I guess it recognises the significance of this.
Thank you, Tracy. That's good additional. Now, I can appreciate that many of you, because you're all remunerated and you're all affected by this decision, are going to have trouble moving. I will move the recommendations as they are. Do I have a second? Councillor Beattie. So when this first came to my attention, I was asking questions around whether or not, the very point that has been raised around whether or not it's actually a half-chair role and whether the remuneration level actually did need to go to the same as a committee chair. And I had a good discussion with Tracy and with Rob and agreed that actually this role is equally and perhaps potentially more difficult than a chair's role. setting the level of remuneration equivalent to the other committee chair roles. Understanding, of course, that that means that there are some councillors, there are 7 councillors who are not in roles of responsibility, and therefore, well, everybody other than me, bless me, the mayor's remuneration is separate from everybody else's from the court. But everybody else, as a result of adding additional responsibility and leadership for one person, means that everybody takes a bit of a cut from that person. So yes, I see bottom drop. And it's really hard to be able to vote on your own remuneration. I understand that. This is always fought every time we have to do this, but we're required to decide on our remuneration. I will also note that at the beginning of the triennium, when we were setting up the committees themselves, we did note that there could be change through the triennium. We foreshadowed that Carvelia could well be reformed, and we also would need a chair, and we've also foreshadowed that this could potentially become a standing committee of council. In September, that decision is yet to be made. So the role itself of navigating to that is actually difficult enough in of itself. So I feel for all of you having to make decisions about your own remuneration. I know this is difficult. However, it is one of the responsibilities that we have. The pool is the pool. There is a minimum. You'll note that the minimum remuneration for a councillor is $48,871. That doesn't change. That minimum is a requirement. So the additional remuneration on top of that goes to the is spread out once the committee chairs have been set. So I think that's enough. I think we've covered off the fact that the role is a significant role. It has some real leadership qualities required. There is a time commitment, as Tracy has pointed out, and some added responsibilities that need to be remunerated. And I also, before I finish my opening speech, I want to reflect Councillor Holz's position. He himself said that he's not doing it for the extra remuneration. It is not something that he would have chosen to put us into this position, but I reflected back to him that because the role does take on additional duties, that it is fair to all that it is remunerated. So I did promise him that I would reflect that. Hopefully I've covered off his feelings in that. So I'll open it up for debate. Councillor Martin.
Yes, I do have a concern that in here we've got a chair of Tikarere, which I don't have a problem with, and I don't have a problem with the remuneration. But we're certainly a long way away from having a standing committee which is going to be decided in September. Are they going to have voting rights or not? Because I certainly am not going to support having a committee that's not elected by the general public, or indeed by Maori at large.
Councillor Martin, I will raise a point of order. I think you are raising an issue that has nothing to do with the remuneration by an elected member for a role for a committee that we have set up as a council.
I'll challenge that.
I agree with you that there are points about a future committee that will be debated at that time, but that today's not the day for that debate.
We are remunerating somebody for the position of any subsequent standing committee that is identified on the agenda. Therefore, there is an assumption with a lot of people that that is what's going to happen. And we are talking about the money, and it's not the money that I have a problem with, but I am not going to abdicate or agree to the abdication of an elected member. We swore an oath. We need to have to make sure that this is the kind of thing that creeps in and creeps in. It's written in the agenda.
Councillor Martin, you are again, you are debating a point that is not up for debate today. Today is about the remuneration of an elected member in their role as a chair of a committee.
The problem is the remuneration is for now and for any subsequent meeting, any subsequent standing committee. It's written in there.
Mr. Martin, I would say.
I'll leave it there, but it is written in the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Dean.
I would like to move the amendment as it stands, but the reason and any subsequent standing committee. For the reasons that Councillor Martin has already covered.
Councillor Dean has moved an amendment that the wording in the last bullet point is removed. Does she have a second now? Councillor Butler. Councillor Dean.
And I have heard that because I think it raises red herrings that we shouldn't be addressing at this meeting. It may raise aspirations that then we have to deny at a later date. So I don't think we should raise that at this meeting.
Much better way of doing what I was doing. Yeah, thanks.
Any further discussion on either the amendment or the original motion? Councillor Innes.
I see the position of chair here as absolutely critical moving forward in terms of our relationship and giving recognition for that. I appreciate the difficulty of chairing such a committee, Councillor Hoss. So I'll definitely be supporting the recommendation here. Thank you.
With the role and the position and the whole reason why it's being created is of vital importance, because we need to be able to work together to be able to progress forward. We are a multicultural society now, but prior to arriving, it was not really work here, and there are grievances that need to be worked with. There also needs to be an understanding between both sides. And from the meeting the other day, with all due respect, I did see that there was a few issues that needed to be resolved, and to be able to understand both sides. So it's the extra time and position needs to be taken fully understood and with full respect given to each side. So it gives that emphasis, first thing, for the need.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Any further debate? Councillor Cutler.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm a sort of reluctant seconder of the amendment, not because I don't support it, but I agree with Councillor Martin that I was very concerned about the addition of the subsequent standing committee, because I do think it preempts, it's a preemptive move to take the decision about the standing committee out of our hands at this point, because I can just see later on if we had moved that, then any discussion about the standing committee would be, well, we've already voted to have a paid chair. So that's why I supported seconded the amendment. But I am also reluctantly supportive of the chair of the forum being remunerated on the basis of, I think I completely support chairs of committees. I think remunerating the chair of a forum takes us into quite a wider gambit, if you like. I mean, we could in the future have just for example, a sustainability forum. And are we going to start remunerating positions that are not part of the formal council structure, if you like? So that's my concern, but I support the amendment on the basis that it's like a curate's egg, it's better than the was. Thank you.
Yeah. Through Madam Chair, like Councillor Cutworth, Councillor Deeming and Councillor Martin, I also have concerns about the whole item, and my concerns relate back to my original objection to this. I believe it's in down a way where we are creating a racist environment, and I don't know what we part of.
Yeah, I previously abstained from the previous vote about the because I find the whole thing uncomfortable. But I support this, and I think it's the way forward. And I think there is an additional amount of responsibility and work that goes with it, and I support the recommendation.
Further discussion?
if this is a time for us to, as we're talking about what we get paid, to also discuss how we can sort of try and measure our performance as a group and perhaps look at ways of improving our performance. I'd just like to signal interest in exploring this avenue to each other.
I'm sure the committee chairs will join you in saying that how we perform needs to be up for scrutiny and for feedback at any time. So yes, I agree with you. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through the Chair, I've got some real concerns with the whole remuneration platform, I suppose is the best way of putting it. I think it needs to be re-looked at and revamped. I think the Deputy Mayor is probably worth more than what we're paying him, and perhaps some of the chairs, they need to be re-identified for their value. With this partnership forum, I just fear that we could be setting a bit of a precedent so early in the stage of all this. We listened the other day and heard a number of people saying resource, resource, resource. The resounding sound is they're wanting more money. Now, if we forge ahead and do this, we're opening the gate, I feel, and we need to keep, in light of circumstances with COVID-19, our cutbacks in expenditure and everything we're doing, we need to be very, very prudent with what we do, setting up new and existing partnerships and committees and chairs. So, yeah, I'm afraid I can't go with this as it stands. To me, it's not the right fit, and there's a lot more homework to be done before I'm prepared to put a vote on it.
Councillor Reid. Councillor Murphy.
Thank you. I support the original recommendation. I appreciate that I think Councillor Holmes has got the experience and the passion to be a great leader for that committee. And I support, just to clarify, there's an existing pool. We're not reallocating any new money. This is an existing pool, and all we're doing is slightly reallocating it. So some of us will take a little bit of a pay cut. But for me, I believe in utility. It's the founding document that all our work should reflect back to. And so I think that Councillor Hulse can lead a committee that's going to, and I think the vision that was discussed is that the Whangarei District Council and Ngā Hapu or Whangarei Te Ringa Parawa have the best working relationship in Aotearoa. So I think that is a fantastic vision to begin with, and I think that paying the chair of that committee, it's a fair amount, I believe, and I think that the work that is entailed is well worth it. So I do support the original recommendation.
Councillor Murphy. Any further discussion? I will take a right of reply before we put the amendment. I think Councillor Murphy's talks about the pool, and I think Councillor Reid, it is important for us to know that the pool remains the same. So the allocation of it changes. The budget for the committee's work was set when we set the committee up, so that has no bearing on the decision that we're making today. In my mind, the two are quite separate, because this is about the remuneration for all elected members as a result of a new position that we've collectively created. So hopefully that covers everything. Now, we have an
amendment. Councillor Deeming and Councillor Duckworth made an amendment removing the words "and any subsequent standing committee." So I will put the amendment. Those in favour, aye.
Aye.
Those against? We've got hands. I think I'll call for a version on that one. So those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillors Connor of the amendment to remove the subsequent standing committee.
Councillors Councillors Reid, Innes, Martin, Golightly, Cutforth, Amy and Deeming.
And those against?
Councillors Connor, Murphy, Cooper and Your Worship the Mayor.
The amendment is carried. That becomes the substantive motion. The substantive motion. Those in favour, aye.
Aye.
Against?
Against. Of course, please.
Councillor Corrigan wishes a vote against to be recorded. It is carried. That brings us to item 7.1, the financial report for the 11 months ending 31st of May 2020. And the recommendation is that council notes the operating results for the 11 months ending 31st of May. And seconder, Alan, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Worship. As you'll see, our position has deteriorated a little due to the effects of COVID, based on the actual results for the period which cover the lockdown, but also our forecast through the end of the year. It's not certainly catastrophic for us. It's an adverse variance we're forecasting of $2.7 million overall. And most revenue lines have held up at this point in time. I'll talk a bit more about rates in a minute. And there's been some things, there's simply a lag in revenue. We couldn't go out and do water meter readings during lockdown, so the billing cycle got disrupted. We're catching up on that. Some of that will flow through the pun before the end of the year. And also because we couldn't do some of our road works, we didn't get the NZTA subsidies, that's a timing issue. So when that work does get done, that money will come back through as well. As you will recall, we allowed people a month's grace in paying the quarter four rates. So you'll see in the item 4, the arrears were $7.2 million at the end of May, up from the 4.6 in the previous year. Now that difference was primarily the people who chose to defer their rates instalment. However, the 20th of June was the due date for that, and between that date and now there's been $4.6 million receipted. We were paying those rates. So a lot has come in. Of that, nearly half was due to people just deferring their direct debits. So that's picked up nicely. But given the direct impact on people going to arrears based on the quarter 4, just some stats, just nearly 1,200 residential ratepayers have gone into arrears for that instalment, totaling $386,000, 63 rural, 43,000, 68 commercial, 125,000. So some of those have already moved on to payment plans. We've got 596 people moved to payment plans, totaling about half of those arrears. So people are working with us, we're working with them to just deal with this. So the impacts aren't catastrophic at this point in time. Where people are hard and difficult, we're working with them to get them onto a plan which will get them back into credit at the appropriate time.
So, any discussion?
On page 155, down the bottom in the water reserve, we've still got $32 million. Haven't we been drawing down our building costs out of it? But when we set out to build a new water treatment plant, that is sitting around about $35 million. So I would have expected that to be just about half, because they're well through the project.
We've certainly posted to that. I will just confirm with at least the monthly reports postings we being done. We'll do a clean up at year end as well, but there's still a lot of bills to come through for that. That won't clear the reserve out. There's a lot of renewals over the course of the LTP. It was forecast to complete by then, but you will see that keep coming down.
Should go down quite quickly. Thank you.
Page 151, nice little chart there showing the ups and downs of clients. If I read correctly, can I have clarification that our actual total deficit to the end of May is going to be $6 million, is that correct?
The operations deficit, that's correct.
And when we include all of the other items in there, that comes up to 11 million, is that correct?
No, the ones below there are the individual components of that 5.9.
Thank you for the clarification on that. Madam Chair, with the deficit being 5.9, or let's say 6 million, what efforts is the council staff going to do to improve that?
That was to the end of May. So, what's the forecast in the year?
The forecast is on the right-hand side, and the efforts we're making to improve it basically encompassed in the annual plan due for adoption soon.
Response in that regard. Any other discussion? No, I'll put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against? Carried. That brings us to the notification section. Just it's still open. We do have a supplementary item in the confidential part. It's confidential item 1.4, IT contract variation. It was distributed separately, but not within the timeframe specified under the Local Government Professional Information Commission Act. The report wasn't included in the agenda for that reason, that negotiations were still going on at the time of the closure. So Councillor asked to consider this matter at today's meeting so that the contract can be finalised by the end of the financial year.
Yes, I'll second that.
Those in favour, aye. Against? Carried. And now we need somebody to move that we move into the future. Councillor Ennis is moving. The second. Those in favour, aye. Against? Carried.
Is that going to open the now?
So we stopped our live streaming and moved into confidential, which allows us time to address supplementary. And we've got a revised